Well, hello, Quest. I just want you to bring you up to date a little bit on a few things. And the first one is we've been in this series, you've probably recognized that, on Ezra and Nehemiah for the last bunch of weeks. And we've been talking about rebuilding process. And we've used it as a study to see how God was rebuilding the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, as they were sent into exile in Babylon for 70 years. And then, through the kindness and the sovereignty of God, using even the Persian kings to help them come back. And they came back first under Zerubbabel to rebuild the temple, which is a really critical part of their experience and the life of the nation of worshiping God. And so they rebuilt the altar and the temple. And then about 60 years later, because things got a little bit shut down, then Ezra came, and he came as a priest to rebuild the people in their walk with God. And then after that, because the city of Jerusalem was a mess still, God raised up Nehemiah, who was in Babylon, serving in the government there, but to bring Nehemiah back to rebuild the wall, to make it a viable city, a place where people could live and the nation of Israel could rally around. And so there's been a rebuilding process. And we chose this a long time ago because we're feeling the need to kind of rebuild, even in Quest, people's involvement, people's connection, people's ownership, people's leadership inside of Quest. And we chose this. And then suddenly, the pandemic came. And I don't know if you noticed, but it felt like the pandemic kind of just took the air out of the room. In some ways, it feels like it took the air out of our lives. We shut down, we were protective, and all those were appropriate, right? But now as things are opening up, it's almost as if trying to get the air back in our lungs, to re-engage and to come back to maybe not normal, whatever that was anyway, but to come back to really living, engaging, making a difference, having an adventure that God would send us on to make a difference in the world. And not just way out on the edges of the world, but in our community. And not just in our community, but in our neighborhood. And not just in our neighborhood, but in our home. And not just in our home, but in our own personal lives. Of having the air of walking with God really fill our lungs again. And so we have been in this process of rebuild. So we have 3 more chapters, Nehemiah 11, 12, and 13. And we're going to finish that up the first 2 weeks of July. And I'll be finishing that up for us and really bringing us to a place of application and challenge. And I pray that you're ready for that and it'll be receptive and it'll make a difference in your lives. We're going to start a new series this week that will carry on through the rest of the summer. And it's called A Series with Heart. It's going to be a variety of speakers, including Jonathan and myself, but some others in Quest and some people from outside of Quest. And what we're going to ask them to do is to speak from the depths of who they are and their heart and what's gone on, what God is putting on their heart. And so there'll be a series of one-offs in a sense, but really they're about bringing out the heart of what God is doing in our midst and relating to our real lives. And so this Sunday, the 27th, we'll have a guest speaker named Jim Barnard, who's been a friend of mine for a long time, someone I'm very close to, someone who has been a part of Quest before until he moved to Denver and went to seminary and has started a ministry there called Tiller. He's written recently a book called The Suffering Guy, which is a story of his own life and his marriage with Alicia. And as soon after their marriage, she got very sick and is still very sick. And all that has gone on in the process of that, and God's grace to them, but in the midst of some very difficult things. And guess what? Every one of us, everyone on planet Earth has difficult things and suffering things that they go through. I've been talking with a variety of people this week, and it's just so clear, obviously, that everyone has stuff in their lives. And it's not easy. And if we try to deny it, it's ridiculous. If we get buried by it, it kills us. But if we face it and deal with it, and try to apply the reality of the presence of God in our lives, and put it in its right position and deal with it well, then life is on a good path. But if we don't deal with it well, it puts us on a bad path. A path that's destructive to what life is supposed to be like. Now, let's face it, it's not easy. We live in a broken world. We're broken people. Things get broken. Lives get broken. And we have this part of us, just like the Israelites that we saw in Ezra and Nehemiah, where they're rebellious. And they say, God, I'm going to do it my way. I don't really care what you say. But the results of that are tragic. We live in a world that says, no, it's not tragic, it's fine, it's okay. Do life your own way. But actually, we were built to live life in the blueprint of what God has for us. And in fact, doesn't limit us. In fact, it opens up real vistas to real life. And the only thing that limits us is from destructive patterns that we think are going to work out well, but actually end up to be dead ends. And it doesn't really work. And we regret it. When we get there, it's destructive. So we want to talk about, what is God doing? And in the suffering we go through, where does God meet us? How does he do that? I think you'll really enjoy Jim this weekend. So thank you for being a part of this movement. We don't want to be a monument here at Quest. We want to be a movement where God can use imperfect people for the cause of his kingdom. So don't put yourself on a performance, but put yourself in a place of obedience and God's grace and let him do what he can do in each one of our lives. Okay? It's going to be a great adventure together. We're going to do this. All right? Okay. Can't wait to see you guys as soon as possible. Be well. May God's grace give you an avenue to walk on. Okay? All right. Talk to you later.